This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at a cool gaming laptop. This is the Asus Republic of Gamers G750JX. This is the version with the Nvidia GTX 770M, new Haswell quad-core inside, big 17.3-inch display. We're going to look at it now. So this is the latest iteration of the Asus Republic of Gamers 17-inch laptop, 17.3-inch display. And you can see right here we have our usual, well, it's kind of a gaming notebook look, isn't it? It's not as out there as the MSI GT70 or their Dragon series, certainly, and it's a little understated, shall we say, compared to Alienware's with their LEDs going on everywhere. But it's a nice, clean-looking machine. Soft touch finish, kind of rubbery, so you're not going to drop it. Important because it weighs 8 3/4 pounds. Now I know the specs are all over the place on this guy, and on Asus's European website they say 4.5 kilos, which would be 10 pounds. It's not. I weighed it on a scale. It is 8 pounds and 12 ounces, and that's what a conventional hard drive inside. The usual kind of interesting hinge design they have here with this big piece out the back. Of course, the Republic of Gamers logo. On the side here, if we take a look, we can see lots of ports. You'd expect that on a large gaming machine. We have 2 audio jacks. This is your headphone jack with SPDIF here. Here's a microphone jack. 2 USB 3.0 ports right there. DisplayPort / Thunderbolt. Yeah, it actually does Thunderbolt. Now, not all models will have Thunderbolt, so if that's important to you, do check the specs on the one that you buy. Full-size HDMI, gigabit Ethernet, VGA port, charging port right here. And on the other side, we have our optical drive. You can see we have the DVD burner model. There's also one that has a Blu-ray player and a Blu-ray burner even. There are various options. SD card slot right here. 2 more USB 3.0 ports. And a security lock slot there. Now if we take a look at the back, this is one of the things I really like about the Asus laptop is the ventilation here. 2 large fans inside, 2 very large heat vents right here, so it's blowing the hot air out the back, not at one of your hands when you're playing a game. Also nice to know. And it does run cooler than the MSI GT70, so the dual cooling is effective, and honestly it's very quiet. Even when playing pretty demanding games like Bioshock Infinite, it never roars by any means. You can hear it, but not really loud at all. This over here is the battery. It is removable. It's kind of an unusual shaped battery. 8 cell, and that's that right there. And for upgrades, we give it middling marks for upgrades. If we take a look at the panel over here, you can see there's a little captive screw in here. You pull this up, you unscrew the little screw, which we've already done, lift up, this comes off, and here we have 2 2.5-inch hard drive bays and 2 RAM slots available. Now this machine came with 12 gigs of RAM in it, so what's the deal with that? There's a 4 gig RAM module here. There are 2 up in this area on the motherboard up higher, and you're going to have to disassemble a whole lot of the machine to get to those 2. So that's where it loses some marks. Likewise for you tidy gamers who like to clean your fans and repaste your CPU every so often, it's going to be a bit of work to get at those to do that. That said, I just took apart our 3-year-old Envy gaming machine and found hardly any dust in there. Now I keep the cats away and I try not to put it in dusty locations, so that wasn't much of an issue. So in about 3 years you might think about repasting your CPU and GPU. Ways off. Anyway, so we have a 4 gig DIMM here and a second open module, so it'd be pretty easy to bring this up to 16 without throwing anything away, or you could conversely remove that, put in 2 8s. But 12 gigs of RAM, really, that's a lot. And most games are still running in 32-bit mode, so you're not even going to use all that extra RAM. But for those of you who want to do video editing, it's important to know you could go up to 32 gigs if you are willing to disassemble it to get to those other 2 RAM slots on it. Standard hard drive bays, again, like I said. Now this is available in a variety of configurations. Ours is the $1,500 model, $14.99 in the US, and it comes with a 750 gig 7200 RPM hard drive. Ours is made by Hitachi in one of the bays and nothing in the other bay. You can also get this with a hard drive and a SSD drive, which is a very nice configuration. Personally, I would upgrade this, go aftermarket and get a Samsung 840 SSD drive and throw that in there and have a wickedly fast machine. So nice to be able to upgrade, get your drives out, that kind of thing. Taking a look inside, we have little rubber feet that stop the display from hitting the keyboard deck right here. Large trackpad, multi-touch, works pretty well, made by Elan. Actually has clickable buttons. It's not one of those one-piece trackpads. Lots of indicator LEDs over here. Even when gaming, the keyboard deck does not exceed human body temperature, so it never feels hot, really. Excellent job of cooling here. In fact, the bottom never gets uncomfortably hot either, though I don't think anybody's going to be putting a 9-pound notebook on their lap for gaming. If you are, you must go to the gym a lot. Full-size keyboard here with your number pad. This is a backlit keyboard. You can control the backlighting with 2 keys up here. Hit the FN button. You can control those. Likewise, you can control your brightness and your volume. We have stereo speakers under the keyboard deck. That's subwoofer as well. Waves Max audio with a nice control panel so you can adjust your subwoofer and your volume and your treble, all that kind of thing. Very nice keyboard. Asus tried to make it a good keyboard for gaming, but honestly, if you're a content creator too and you need to type a lot, very nice. There's just no trampolining going on here. Nice tactile feel, good response. It's a very good keyboard overall. Now onto the display. We have a full HD panel here with the JX model with the Nvidia GTX 770M. You're going to get the full HD panel. There's 2 options. We have the matte display, which I personally would prefer, having used glossy displays, particularly for gaming and dark scenes. It's really hard with all that reflection to see what's going on. The matte display is nicer. Standard 60 Hz refresh rate here on this display, and it has an anti-glare coating on it, so if you're doing something like looking at text on a page, honestly, you're going to see a little grain. You might wish for a little bit more clarity on that. It's not horrible, but it's not super duper sharp. Viewing angles are pretty good on it, not IPS, but pretty good. We don't have any complaints about that. But when you're watching videos or you're playing a game, my God, it just looks awesome. It's really what it's designed for, and that's what you want to use it for, let's face it. So the colors on the display, actually, it's pretty good. This does as well as the Sony Vaio Pro and Duo 13 that we recently reviewed, which have really excellent displays. I was kind of surprised myself. We got 95% of sRGB and 74% of Adobe RGB. Those are very good numbers, so it actually is not a bad display. Contrast was over 900 to 1, so very high contrast, and brightness was 350 nits, so they've increased the brightness over the G75 that preceded this. Overall, a good display. Now, for those of you who prefer glossy displays, have no fear. That is also available. You can get that. It comes with, basically, it's the 3D package. That panel can handle 3D, and it's 120 Hz refresh rate, and it will be glossy. The machine ships with Windows 8 64-bit, as you can see right here. Not a touch screen. Nope, so you're going to use the trackpad to control it or your mouse. Again, our model has 12 gigs of DDR3 RAM, 1600 megahertz. Important thing to note here, this is a Haswell CPU. Haswell wants 1.35 volt RAM, not 1.5 volt. So if you're going to upgrade the RAM yourself, make sure you get the right voltage, the lower voltage. And if you get 1.35 volt, that also works in 1.5 volt systems, so you're really good to go no matter what you do with that kind of RAM. Again, available with conventional spinning hard drives. Ours is a 7200 RPM. You can get it with the SSD drive, Wi-Fi 802.11 BGN, and AC in our model. Some models might have just N, so pay attention to that spec if it matters to you. Bluetooth 4.0 is on board as well. This does not have Nvidia Optimus. That means it does not do switchable graphics. It totally ignores the integrated GPU that's on the motherboard, which is pretty interesting. It's a 4600 if you were able to use it. So you're going to be running NVIDIA dedicated graphics all the time. Since this is targeted at gamers and probably also, content professionals, you HD video editing types, that's not a bad thing. You don't have to worry about auto switching software, whether it's switching to your dedicated card when you want it to, all that kind of thing. So I think it fits the target market pretty well. And battery life, surprisingly, is not that bad unplugged. You can probably get about 4 hours out of this because it really drops down on the CPU speed and the GPU speed very effectively. As you can see right here, we have the Intel Core i7 4700HQ CPU in here. That's a quad-core CPU with 8 threads, Haswell, once again, and that's standard on all the G750 models. 2.4 gigahertz base, turbo boost up to 3.4 gigahertz, and you can see our Windows Experience Index with a conventional hard drive. That's the only slow thing that's on here, 5.9. Our CPU scores 7.9, memory scores 7.9, obviously set up in a dual channel configuration. Desktop graphics 7.6, 3D graphics 7.6 as well. Now we're running on the Nvidia drivers that Asus provided. They include slightly customized drivers. Really what it is just a custom INF file. So for those of you who are geeky and you know what I mean, you could download the latest NVIDIA drivers if you wanted and just modify the INF file or download the modified INF file from somewhere if you want to get newer graphics drivers sooner. That said, I only saw about 2 frames per second difference when doing that, so I'm not sure it's worth the hassle. And if you do that, you also have to temporarily disable Windows driver signing. And for those of you who don't know how to do that, you go into Settings, change PC settings, and we go into General, and we scroll down to the bottom and go to Advanced Setup right here. In synthetic benchmarks, it scored a 3804, and this number would be much higher if this had an SSD drive, which ours doesn't. You'd probably go into the 5000s easily there, since PC Mark just loves SSD drives. And for a full review, we'll give you some information on what it's like after we swap in an SSD drive on this. And you can see our 3D Mark 11 result right here. In the performance mode, it was 5019, a very good score right there, and you can see the specs, everything that we got for our scores. And then we ran it in extreme mode, and you can see the score there, 1715, also about what we would expect, and also quite good. The machine ships with a pretty beefy sized power brick, as you would expect for a 17-inch gaming laptop, and that's what it looks like. Not too heavy given the size, but you know what you're getting into when you're getting a machine like this. You're not going to have a small power adapter. For those of you who are considering all your options, for $100 or $200 less, you can get the G750JW model. That has Nvidia GTX 765M graphics with 2 gigs of RAM versus the 770 with 3 gigs of RAM that we have here. Honestly, I would say it's really worth it. If you're buying this, is because you're into gaming and you want the graphics card that gives you the most punch for the money. It's not much of an upgrade price to get the better graphics card. So I would go with the G750JX model that we have here. Also upcoming will be the G750JH. That's going to have an impressive GTX 780M card with 4 gigs of DDR5 graphics memory. Now that's the top of the line card for mobile for Nvidia right now, but you're going to pay a lot more. It looks like that's going to be well into the 2000s. Granted, Asus is going to gussy that up a little bit and give you an SSD drive probably in there, a couple of nice options, but still, it's a lot of money always to get the very top graphics card versus the one that's one notch down. Now granted, you do get significantly more performance from the 780, but also a heck of a lot more heat, so that may run hotter too. As I said, this guy is just quiet. It's just amazing how quiet it is, and it's never too hot to touch at any place. I really respect the cooling that's in here. Will that be the case with the 780? It'll be more of a challenge. MSI with their Dragon is certainly running a toasty machine there, but they do have a single fan design, which maybe is not as efficient. And for those of you who do get the 765 or the 770 and you're just wishing you could have had that 780 but price or heat or something like that was the issue for you, you can overclock these GPUs and get a bit more performance, sometimes up to 15 frames depending. So the thing is that I'm finding I can run just about every modern game that I want. Bioshock Infinite, certainly Mass Effect 3 multiplayer and single player, plenty of games running on high settings at full HD resolution, no problem. And for things like anti-aliasing, if you're looking at a 17-inch panel, assuming you're going to use the internal panel, it's really not going to make a much difference if you have that turned on or not. So that's something that can save you some performance right there. In fact, Bioshock Infinite even runs on Ultra on this at a reasonable 35 to 45 frames per second using the stock Nvidia drivers. And we're going to have a separate gaming demo video where we're going to try out those games, Crysis 3, a couple of others, so you can see how well it does. The system comes with Waves Max audio, which actually does a pretty nice job. You can see we have a couple of different presets up here. Right now I'm on gaming, which is not a bad all-around setting. So you can control your treble, your bass. You can also control the subwoofer, too, which is pretty neat. And now we've switched to the Realtek HD Audio Manager, and this is where you can do things like control your balance, control how much subwoofer you've got going. And it's a reasonably good sounding machine, but it's not terribly loud. Through headphones, it sounds excellent. It has a headphone amplifier, does a really good job, and we'll test out something here on the web so you can hear the audio. And we'll check out our review of the Nvidia Shield handheld Android gaming machine. And we'll play the YouTube video so you can hear some audio. Full 1080. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at a very interesting new product. This is the Nvidia Shield.
Is this a product that's ahead of its time, or is it something that's just ready for prime time
58%.
now? Well, you know, a little bit of each. So what is it? This is an Android device. First and foremost, you can see it has a game controller built in. It has a...
When gaming, you're probably going to use an external mouse with this, but the trackpad here works quite well just using it as a laptop. As you can see, the scrolling works just fine. We've got pinch zooming going on. Perfectly usable trackpad, which is a nice thing to see for a change. Often we see such quacky trackpads on Windows 8. Now we're playing full 1080p video, and it's looking very good. Nice colors again, and the lack of glare is pretty pleasing. Grain on the display really isn't an annoyance here, as it is when you're looking at text on a white background also. So that's the Asus Republic of Gamers, or ROG G750. Again, the JX model, and that has the Nvidia GTX 770M graphics card inside with 3 gigs of DDR5 RAM. Highly recommend this over the 765 version if you can afford it, because, well, if you're a gamer and you want to get something good in there. And then there will be the 780 for those of you who have a lot of money to burn and a lot of high-end gaming desires. Whichever one you pick, it's a very good machine. Asus has been making the Republic of Gamer line for years now, since about 2007 or so, and really a cool running gaming machine, great keyboard on it, good matte display, nice performance, pretty much everything I want from a gaming laptop. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.